What's up everybody, Sunkissed here. In today's video, I'm going to be going over 5 of the best weapons that I think are great for new players. These weapons are all very ammo efficient and output pretty good damage, so I'll show you how to get all of them and recommend a few perk cards that you run alongside them. Real quick, I'd like to ask that you subscribe as we are getting very close to 5,000 subscribers, and if you could also like and hype the video, it'll help boost it to a further audience. I'd like to know down in the comments, what other weapons do you think are good for beginners? And I'll catch you at the end. Quick note on how the format of today's video is going to go. I'm going to show you how to get the weapon. I'm going to show you a few named legendary variants of that weapon that you can get that are pretty good. I will recommend a few perk cards that you run in your builds with these weapons. Not going to show full builds because that would take quite a while, but if there's enough comments down below on a specific weapon, maybe I'll go ahead and make a full video on that, so let me know. And also I will recommend some legendary rolls to put on the weapon if you're able to get some. As a new player, that's kind of hard to come by, but I figured I might as well recommend them while I'm at it. I also want to note, I know people have different definitions or expectations of what a beginner is in Fallout 76. So some of these are going to be relatively easy to get and others a little bit harder, but I do think that they are achievable at a relatively early level. So I just want to call it out right away. But yeah, starting off today's list at number 1, we have the lever action rifle used in combination with the combat rifle. The reason I picked this weapon is because it is very ammo efficient, and there's a pretty good named legendary variant that you can get from doing one of the public events. It has good range, it has good single shot, or I guess per shot damage. Actually has, surprisingly, has decent DPS for it being a single shot weapon. Overall, has good damage output, relatively easy to get as a new player, and you're not going to have any problems with ammo at all. Our first weapon up here today, it's more or less going to be actually a combination of 2 weapons, and that is the lever action rifle and the combat rifle. Now, the reason I have these 2 together is because they both fire 45 caliber ammo, and the lever action is actually really good at stacking up on 45 caliber ammo, because with most enemies you'll actually get more ammo back than you use taking down that particular enemy. So you can use this lever action to stack up ammo for when you use your combat rifle if you'd like. Now, the recommended legendary effects on this weapon, if you're able to get them, I would personally run Furious, Explosive, Reload Speed, and then either Polished or Pinpointers. The reason for Explosive is it just helps give you the highest per shot damage on the weapon. If you don't have Explosive, extra critical damage is also a great option. As far as the modifications that I'm running, I have the Prime Receiver, which is a little hard to get, so if you can't get that, I would maybe run the Calibrated Capacitor, which will give you extra critical damage, the Aligned Long Barrel, the Aligned Stock, a Reflex Sight, not really needed as much anymore. They used to reduce AP cost, they no longer do that, so not really fully needed. I have a Compensator on here, just because I don't always run this stealth. But so if you are going to run it stealth, definitely put a suppressor on there. A few perk cards I recommend running with the lever action rifle is going to be the onslaught perk cards. So whether that is gunslinger, guerrilla expert, those sorts of cards. One thing you're definitely going to want to make sure is that you're running gunslinger master, as that's going to enable reverse onslaught, and reverse onslaught essentially accumulates onslaught stacks over time, and each of those stacks do damage, and you just spend 1 stack each time you shoot. This has a slow rate of fire, so you're never really going to run out of those stacks, and it's just a great way to run it. Past that, there is ground pounder and fast fighter to increase your reload speed, so that's a good option for something that loads a single round at a time, and also has a relatively low magazine capacity, so those are good options. And if you're running it as a VATS build, definitely want better criticals, critical savvy, those sorts of things. In order to get the lever action plans, we're going to fast travel over to the White Springs Mall, and you're going to walk over to the responders vendor here, and as you can see in just a moment, they will have the plans for the lever action once I can get to it. And there it is. And more or less, pretty much all the modifications you're going to want for this are just going to be gotten from scrapping lever actions. If you'd rather just find a lever action out in Appalachia, I will leave a screenshot right here that will kind of just give a quick summary of where you can find one. So go pick one up there if you'd like, and potentially could server hop to try and, keep finding them. I still think buying the plans and just crafting and scrapping is probably going to be your best option. A great option for lever action rifles is the Western Spirit, which is a named legendary weapon with pre-rolled effects, and it's going to have a few things that you want on it. Furious is good for reverse onslaught builds, and also has the effect built in for extra reload speed, which you'll be doing a decent amount with a lever action rifle. And it has a built-in effect of having a 7-round chamber instead of 5, so that is a real nice to have. The way to get this is by attending the most wanted public events in Nuka World, and there's a chance that it can drop from that for you. Now onto our combat rifle. I have a fixer right here, which is a different variant of the combat rifle, and I'll get into that in just a moment in terms of how you can get one of those. I personally have bloodied on this right now, but the best option is more than likely quad, depending on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to have the highest per shot damage and you don't care about mag size, bloodied, furious, anti-armor are good options, but if you're going to go full auto or commando, definitely recommend running quad as the first legendary star. Weapon speed and less AP cost are almost always the best options for commando weapons. And pinpointers is going to help you do extra headshot and weak point damage. Probably the best in terms of damage output. If you want to stay in VATS longer, though, conductors is also a great 4th-star option. And personally, I am running the prime receiver, stabilized long barrel, and stabilized stock, mostly just because I like manually aiming this weapon sometimes, and that's why I have a scope on there. And so those give it a little bit less recoil. If you're going to use it in VATS, you're going to want to use the aligned long barrel and aligned stock. I'm using the piercing magazine for a little bit of armor penetration, and scope's not needed, but it's fun to fire full auto with the scope sometimes, so go for it if you'd like. And suppressor so we can do a little bit extra sneak damage. Now, as far as perks go for the combat rifle slash fixer, it'll be a common theme for most builds, but number cruncher and tank killer are always good options in the perception tree. That's just a flat damage output no matter how you slice it, so those are always good options. Now with the combat rifle, I definitely would not run reverse onslaught. You want to just do normal onslaught, so get rid of gunslinger master and run the other stuff as is. That way you can slowly stack up to max stacks and do your max damage once you get there. Again, if you're running at VATS, make sure you're running better criticals and critical savvy. The only guaranteed way to get the combat rifle plans is by completing the Motherlode quest, which will come up in the Wastelanders main quest line. So just make sure you do that, and eventually you will complete that quest line, and then you'll get the combat rifle plans. There's also other ways you can find it, but it's not guaranteed. And as a new player, you should be completing the main quest line anyways, so I figured I would just detail that way. If you'd like to go out in Appalachia and just find some combat rifles, check these locations in the screenshot here, and you could have a chance of finding those. Additionally, I believe if you pick the commando slash gunner, whatever the initial class is called when you exit the vault and you can start at level 20, that start should give you a combat rifle. It won't be level 50, but it'll be something to get you started at least. There is a different variant of the combat rifle called the Fixer. That's going to be a little superior to the combat rifle, but it's a little harder to get. So if you complete the Wolf in Sheep's Clothing side quest, you will get a Fixer as a reward, and then you can modify and put legendary effects on that as you see fit. It will use the same modifications as combat rifles. But if you'd like to get the actual plans to craft fixers for yourself, you're going to need to complete the encrypted events, which you can spawn yourself, I believe once or twice per hour in a server, or you can server hop. And there's a small chance that a fixer plan could drop from there. You could also purchase it for caps if somebody's selling it. The cheapest I've ever seen it is 4,000. I think people normally sell it for 6,000 caps. Either way, though, if you just do the Wolf in Sheep's Clothing side quest, that's more or less going to be the only one that you need. At our number 2, 3, depends on if you count the first one as one or two options, but we have the Broadsider. I know this is a kind of off-meta pick, and you might not have expected it, but the Broadsider does a crap load of damage, and it's a ton of fun. Just as a concept, a portable literal cannon is just funny, and it also does a lot of damage. Like I said, it is very, very ammo efficient. The rounds are heavy, so you're going to definitely need to run some specific perks to reduce that weight. But overall, great ammo efficient weapon that does a ton of damage and is a ton of fun. So the mods and legendary effects for our Broadsider here, I definitely would recommend running quad as the first star. This will get you up to 6 rounds before having to reload, which is really nice. You could go with like, Furious or Bloodied or something other than quad if you want a little bit more damage per shot, but I personally think quad's the best way to run it. And if you're going to use it in VATS, I think critical damage as a second star is a good option. If not, definitely run explosive on there to do some more explosive damage. And the third star being reload speed is really nice. And if you can get a fourth star on it, I would run polished because polished will buff explosive damage. Not really many of the other 4 stars do that. And for modifications, we have the heavy barrel, the comfort grip, and the multi-shot canister. Now for the Broadsider, there's only 2 important perk cards, I would say. The first one is Demolition Expert because that just straight up buffs your explosive damage, which is a huge plus when you're running, an explosive weapon, and which is mostly where all of the damage for this weapon comes from. Past that, cannonballs are very heavy, so you're going to want to run Ordnance Express, which will reduce the weight of explosives in your inventory. So to get the Broadsider plans, we're going to go over to Patoka Station, and they're going to have the weapon plans and one of the modifications you'll need as well. And you can see right here, we have the Broadsider and the Broadsider multi-shot canister. That'll allow you to go from having, go from shooting 1 cannonball to being able to shoot 3 before having to reload. And that's definitely going to make a big difference. So you definitely are going to want that. And if you have the quad legendary effect with this mod on, you can get up to 6 cannonballs before having to reload. Not really sure how that math works out, but 6 is better than 1. As far as the other modifications go for this, the most important one is going to be the heavy barrel because that increases damage, and the heavy barrel is learned by scrapping Broadsiders. So if you buy the plans and you craft a few of them and scrap them, you'll learn the heavy barrel. Now, a great named legendary variant of the Broadsider is going to be called the Grand Finale, and this is earned by completing the Nuke Boss event Seismic Activity, and that can be spawned from launching a nuke down over on the abandoned mine shaft 2. So make sure you hit that. A lot of people think that you need to put the nuke on Nuker World on tour, which is not correct, and it can be a little confusing. So make sure you drop the nuke touching abandoned mine shaft 2, and that'll spawn seismic activity. And you'll essentially have a 50-50 shot of getting the getting the grand finale, and that thing does a ton of damage and it's a ton of fun. Also has the unique effect of kind of shooting a firework effect after it explodes, so it's just really cool in general, and it does a little bit of extra damage. Coming up next on our list is the railway rifle. If you've played this game for a long time, then you kind of know how good the railway rifle is. Now, it has fallen a little bit from grace, mostly due to how much they've buffed heavy guns and a slight nerf to the railway rifle, but don't worry because this thing still hits pretty hard, is very ammo efficient, and it's not super hard to get, and there's a pretty good named legendary variant you can get from doing one of the main quest lines, which is the Ticket to Revenge. Overall, definitely a good weapon for a new player. Moving on to the railway rifle here. If you're able to get legendary modifications, the best way I recommend running it is quad, weapon speed, less AP cost, and pinpointers. This is almost guaranteed to be the best way to run this. If you're not using the Ticket to Revenge, which is also a great named legendary option, which I'll explain in a little bit how to get. But the actual modifications you want to run on this are the automatic piston receiver, the long barrel, recoil compensating stock. Could run the short scope on there if you want. It's definitely not needed. I mostly just do it for fun when I want to manually aim this thing sometimes. I don't run a muzzle. Don't really think it's worth it. And that is personally how I run my railway rifle. Very similar to the combat rifle, we're going to want to run normal onslaught cards. So make sure you're running some gunslinger and guerrilla cards. Do not run gunslinger master. I don't think the railway rifle is super great with reverse onslaught. If you're running it in a VATS build, which I definitely recommend, you're going to want better criticals and critical savvy. Also, if you don't have quad as the first legendary effect, which is definitely very important to run this if you can, you're definitely going to want ground pounder or fast fighter to increase that reload speed. Additionally, bandolier for this is a must because railway spikes are very heavy. For the railway rifle plans, we're going to fast travel to the White Springs Mall and speak with the Free States vendor. Scroll over to the notes here, and you'll see in just a moment that they have the railway rifle. And I believe pretty much all the modifications you're going to want for the railway rifle, you will learn from scrapping them. So whether you craft a bunch and scrap them, buy some from some vendors and scrap them, whatever it may be, just scrap them and you'll get them. The most important thing that you want is the automatic piston, which will turn it into an automatic weapon. If you'd like to find the railway rifle out in Appalachia, take a look at the screenshot for a few options. If you don't want to purchase the plans, go check these locations and you can possibly get your hands on one. Now, a great option for a legendary variant of the railway rifle is going to be the Ticket to Revenge, which is guaranteed as a quest reward for doing the Skyline Valley quest line. So just progress along that quest line, and eventually, once you complete one of the quests, not exactly sure, I'll put that on screen now. But once you complete that quest, you'll get the Ticket to Revenge. It is a furious weapon speed, I believe weightless, as a 3rd star, but it has pretty good rolls and it's double capacity, so it will have a capacity of 20 versus 10, which is really nice for this weapon. Next up on our list is the Cold Shoulder, and this is probably the best shotgun in Fallout 76. It is a named, not necessarily legendary, but has some legendary inherent qualities to it. Either way, this is a cryo damage and ballistic damage shotgun that hits really hard, and it slows enemies down as kind of one of its side effects. It looks really cool, makes cool visual effects, and you could get it right off the gate if you're willing to spend atoms on it, or you could run expeditions and get it for free that way. There's also ways to earn free atoms in game, which I'll get to in a moment. But overall, the Cold Shoulder hits really hard, and there are ways to get it relatively early. Now, for the Cold Shoulder, it is technically not legendary, but it has some inherent qualities that are like legendaries. But anyways, point being, you can't put legendary effects on it, but it does come quad, which is an existing legendary effect, and it also does plus 50% damage to cryptids. But the reason this is so good is because it adds cryo damage to the double barrel shotgun. So definitely would recommend this weapon. It's really good. But the hardened receiver, the true long barrel, the line stock, standard sights, and no muzzle is personally what I run on it. To be honest, the mods on this don't matter too much. The Cold Shoulder, no matter how you spec it out, just hits really hard, and the cryo damage will slow enemies down, which is really nice to have. Now, the Cold Shoulder is a little bit more particular. For the perks we're going to want to use, we're definitely going to want to spec into crippling. So in strength, you're going to want to run a few of the cards there. So something like easy target, scatter shot, shotgun champ, those sort of things. I would say the two most important ones there is definitely easy target and scatter shot. And then over in agility, there's cards that will increase your limb damage with small guns. So you could run enforcer, or you could run modern renegade. You could run them both together if you want and just do a crap load of limb damage if you really wanted to. Also going to run this as reverse onslaught, so make sure you equip Gunslinger Master and some of the other Guerrilla Gunslinger cards. Also, since this does cryo damage, we can equip the perk card in intelligence called Cryologist, which will buff our cryo damage based on our intelligence level. There is a few options for how to get the Cold Shoulder. One option, if you don't mind spending atoms, not encouraging or saying you have to do this by any means. But if you'd like to, the option is there. You can purchase the plans for the Cold Shoulder in the Atom Shop. If you go over to account, and then you can see here that there is a Cold Shoulder crafting bundle for 700 atoms. Now, there's a ton of ways to get free atoms in Fallout 76. So a lot of these world challenges, you can rack up atoms pretty quickly. So if you save those up, you can get to 700. Or if you don't mind, forking over some money, then you could purchase it yourself. The other way to get the Cold Shoulder is free, but it will definitely require a little bit more grinding to get. So if you fast travel over to the White Springs Refuge, we're going to go over and talk to a vendor called Giuseppe, and Giuseppe sells plans for stamps, and stamps are earned by completing expeditions. So we'll go over to Giuseppe here, and it doesn't show for me because I already own it, but the cold shoulder will be 500 stamps, and you get about 10 to 20 stamps per run. I believe the first run of the day, you get more stamps for that. So it's going to take you between 35 and 50 runs within expedition to get enough stamps for it. Or if you have completed, sorry, Bubbles is being loud over there. Or if you've gotten far enough on the season pass and you're on the last page, you can also use some of your tickets to buy stamps as well. So that could cut down the amount of time that you'd need to do that. As a bonus here, we have one more option, and that is the V63 Carbine. Now, I wasn't going to put it on this list, but kind of realizing that it's a lot easier to get now, and the fact that you only need to pay caps to get the weapon itself and the modifications. It used to be a lot more difficult. There was something called caravans in the game, and you had to grind for supplies to get it, and it was kind of tedious. But now you can pretty much just go to one of the new areas added to the map and buy all the plans you need for caps. Has a pretty good per shot damage output, pretty large mag size. Overall, not a bad option. So for the V63, the legendary effects I have on this are bloodied, explosive, and lightweight. I'm a bloodied build, so I'm running bloodied. It's kind of a daily driver setup for me, more or less, but probably the best first star effect is going to be Furious. Weapon speed is also a great option as well, but I personally just like the explosive side of it for fun. And then I run lightweight just so it doesn't really weigh much in my inventory. But I think for this, the most optimal way to run it would be Furious, weapon speed, less AP cost, and conductors, or you could run pinpointers as well as the 4th star. And I have the cyclic capacitor and stabilized stock as the attachments. Now for the V63 Carbine here, it's going to be similar to the other commando weapons, similar to the railway rifle and the combat rifle. I would say the main difference is you can also run science and intelligence, which will give you extra energy damage based on your intelligence. So again, in agility, just make sure that you're running onslaught cards, so gunslinger, gorilla, that sort of stuff. You can also run batteries included to reduce the to reduce the weight of the ammo if you'd like. Additionally, again, if you're going to run it as VATS weapon, you make sure you're running critical savvy and better criticals. In order to get the V63 Carbine plans, we're going to fast travel on over to Highway Town. And from the bounty board fast travel point, we're more or less going to be standing facing the vendor almost. And we're going to go over to Splint. And Splint will have the plans for the actual weapon itself and all of the modifications. Now, there are no world spawns for this weapon. You have to purchase the weapon plans and mod plans. So this is going to be your only place to get it. Thank you so much for making it to this point of the video. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, subscribe to stick around for future content. Like and hype the video if you're on mobile to help boost it to a further audience. And if you'd like to check out my last video, which is on the Ultrasight Laser Sniper, which is a relatively easy to get, high damage output sniper rifle within Fallout 76, check out the video on screen now, and I'll catch you in the next one.